When we were at Shaston, I jumped out of the window rather than that you should come near me. I have never reversed that treatment till now, when I have come to beg your pardon for it and ask you to let me in. Perhaps you only think you ought to do this. I don't wish you to come against your impulses, as I have said. But I beg to be admitted. She waited a moment and repeated, I beg to be admitted. I have been in error, even today. I have exceeded my rights. I did not mean to tell you, but perhaps I ought. I sinned against you this afternoon.
How?
I met Jude. I didn't know he was coming, and...
Well?
I kissed him and let him kiss me.
Oh, the old story.
Richard, I didn't know we were going to kiss each other till we did.
How many times?
A good many. I don't know. I am horrified to look back on it, and the least I can do after it is to come to you like this.
Come, this is pretty bad after what I've done. Anything else to confess?
No. She had been intending to say, I called him my darling love, but as a contrite woman always keeps back a little, that portion of the scene remained untold. She went on, I am never going to see him any more. He spoke of some things of the past, and it overcame me. He spoke of the children. But as I have said, I am glad, almost glad I mean, that they are dead, Richard. It blots out all that life of mine.
Well, about not seeing him again any more. Come, you really mean this?
There was something in Phillidson's tone now which seemed to show that his 3 months of remarriage with Sue had somehow not been so satisfactory as his magnanimity or amative patience had anticipated.
Yes, yes. Perhaps you'll swear it on the New Testament.
I will. He went back to the room and brought out a little brown testament.
Now then, so help you God.
She swore.
Very good.
Now I supplicate you, Richard, to whom I belong, and whom I wish to honour and obey, as I vowed, to let me in.
Think it over well. You know what it means. Having you back in the house was one thing, this is another. So think again.
I have thought. I wish this.
That's a complacent spirit, and perhaps you are right. With a lover hanging about, a half-marriage should be completed. But I repeat my reminder this 3rd and last time.
It is my wish. Oh, God.
What did you say, oh, God, for?
I don't know.
Yes, you do. But...
He gloomily considered her thin and fragile form a moment longer as she crouched before him in her night-clothes.
Well, I thought it might end like this, he said presently. I owe you nothing after these signs, but I'll take you in at your word and forgive you.
He put his arm round her to lift her up. Sue started back.
What's the matter? He asked, speaking for the first time sternly. You shrink from me again, just as formerly.
No, Richard, I was not thinking.
You wish to come in here?
Yes.
You still bear in mind what it means?
Yes, it is my duty.
Placing the candlestick on the chest of drawers, he led her through the doorway, and lifting her bodily, kissed her. A quick look of aversion passed over her face, but clenching her teeth, she uttered no cry. Mrs. Edlin had by this time undressed, and was about to get into bed when she said to herself, "Ah, perhaps I'd better go and see if the little thing is all right. How it do blow and rain." The widow went out onto the landing and saw that Sue had disappeared. Ah, poor soul. Weddings be funerals, I believe, nowadays. 55 years ago, come fall, since my man and I married. Times have changed since then.
10. Despite himself, Jude recovered somewhat, and worked at his trade for several weeks. After Christmas, however, he broke down again. With the money he had earned, he shifted his lodgings to a yet more central part of the town. But Arabella saw that he was not likely to do much work for a long while, and was cross enough at the turn affairs had taken since her remarriage to him. "I'm hanged if you haven't been clever at this last stroke," she would say, "to get a nurse for nothing by marrying me." Jude was absolutely indifferent to what she said, and indeed often regarded her abuse in a humorous light. Sometimes his mood was more earnest, and as he lay he often rambled on upon the defeat of his early aims. "Every man has some little power in some one direction," he would say. "I was never really stout enough for the stone trade, particularly the fixing. Moving the blocks always used to strain me, and standing the trying draughts in buildings before the windows are in always gave me colds, and I think that began the mischief inside. But I felt I could do one thing if I had the opportunity. I could accumulate ideas and impart them to others. I wonder if the founders had such as I in their minds, a fellow good for nothing else but that particular thing. I hear that soon there is going to be a better chance for such helpless students as I was. There are schemes afoot for making the university less exclusive and extending its influence. I don't know much about it, and it is too late for me. Ah, and for how many worthier ones before me." "How you keep a-mumbling," said Arabella. "I should have thought you'd got all over that craze about books by this time, and so you would if you had any sense to begin with. You're as bad a fellow now as when we were first married." On one occasion, while soliloquizing thus, he called her Sue unconsciously. "I wish you'd mind who you were talking to," said Arabella indignantly. "Calling a respectable married woman by the name of that." She remembered herself and did not catch the word. But in the course of time, when she saw how things were going, and how very little she had to fear from Sue's rivalry, she had a fit of generosity. "I suppose you want to see your Sue," she said. "Well, I don't mind her coming. You can have her here if you like." "I don't wish to see her again." "Oh, that's a change." "And don't tell her anything about me, that I'm ill or anything. She has chosen her course. Let her go." One day he received a surprise. Mrs. Edlin came to see him, quite on her own account. Jude's wife, whose feelings as to where his affections were centred had reached absolute indifference by this time, went out, leaving the old woman alone with Jude. He impulsively asked how Sue was, and then said bluntly, remembering what Sue had told him, "I suppose they are still only husband and wife in name." Mrs. Edlin hesitated. "Well, no, it's different now. She's begun it quite lately, all of her own free will." "When did she begin?" he asked quickly. "The night after you came, but as a punishment to her poor self. He didn't wish it, but she insisted." "Sue, my Sue, you darling fool, this is almost more than I can endure. Mrs. Edlin, don't be frightened at my rambling. I've got to talk to myself lying here so many hours alone. She was once a woman whose intellect was to mine like a star to a benzoline lamp, who saw all my superstitions as cobwebs that she could brush away with a word. Then bitter affliction came to us, and her intellect broke, and she veered round to darkness. Strange difference of sex, that time and circumstance, which enlarge the views of most men, narrow the views of women almost invariably. And now the ultimate horror has come, her giving herself like this to what she loathes, in her enslavement to forms. She, so sensitive, so shrinking that the very wind seemed to blow on her with a touch of deference. As for Sue and me, when we were at our own best, long ago, when our minds were clear, and our love of truth fearless. The time was not ripe for us. Our ideas were 50 years too soon to be any good to us. And so the resistance they met with brought reaction in her, and recklessness and ruin on me. There, this, Mrs. Edlin, is how I go on to myself continually as I lie here. I must be boring you awfully. Not at all, my dear boy. I could hearken to 'ee all day. As Jude reflected more and more on her news, and grew more restless, he began in his mental agony to use terribly profane language about social conventions, which started a fit of coughing. Presently there came a knock at the door downstairs. As nobody answered it, Mrs. Edlin herself went down. The visitor said blandly, "The doctor." The lanky form was that of Physician Vilbert, who had been called in by Arabella. "How is my patient at present?" asked the physician. "Oh, bad, very bad. Poor chap. He got excited and do blaspheme terribly since I let out some gossip by accident, the more to my blame. But there, you must excuse a man in suffering for what he says, and I hope God will forgive him. Ah, I'll go up and see him. Mrs. Forley at home?" "She's not in at present, but she'll be here soon." Vilbert went, but though Jude had hitherto taken the medicines of that skilful practitioner with the greatest indifference whenever poured down his throat by Arabella, he was now so brought to bay by events that he vented his opinion of Vilbert in the physician's face, and so forcibly and with such striking epithets that Vilbert soon scurried downstairs again. At the door he met Arabella, Mrs. Edlin having left. Arabella inquired how he thought her husband was now, and seeing that the doctor looked ruffled, asked him to take something. He assented. "I'll bring it to you here in the passage," she said. "There's nobody but me about the house today." She brought him a bottle and a glass, and he drank. Arabella began shaking with suppressed laughter. "What is this, my dear?" he asked, smacking his lips. "Oh, a drop of wine, with something in it." Laughing again, she said, "I poured your own love philtre into it, that you sold me at the agricultural show, don't you remember?" I do. Clever woman. But you must be prepared for the consequences." Putting his arm round her shoulders, he kissed her there and then. Don't," she whispered, laughing good-humouredly. "My man will hear." She let him out of the house, and as she went back she said to herself, "Well, weak women must provide for a rainy day, and if my poor fellow upstairs do go off, as I suppose he will soon, it's well to keep chances open. And I can't pick and choose now as I could when I was younger. One must take the old if one can't get the young." 11. The last pages to which the chronicler of these lives would ask the reader's attention are concerned with the scene in and out of Jude's bedroom when leafy summer came round again. His face was now so thin that his old friends would hardly have known him. It was afternoon, and Arabella was at the looking-glass, curling her hair, which operation she performed by heating an umbrella stay in the flame of a candle she had lighted, and using it upon the flowing lock. When she had finished this, practised a dimple, and put on her things, she cast her eyes round upon Jude. He seemed to be sleeping, though his position was an elevated one, his malady preventing him lying down. Arabella, hatted, gloved, and ready, sat down and waited, as if expecting someone to come and take her place as nurse. Certain sounds from without revealed that the town was in festivity, though little of the festival, whatever it might have been, could be seen here. Bells began to ring, and the notes came into the room through the open window and travelled round Jude's head in a hum. They made her restless, and at last she said to herself, "Why ever doesn't father come?" She looked again at Jude, critically gauged his ebbing life, as she had done so many times during the late months, and glancing at his watch, which was hung up by way of timepiece, rose impatiently. Still he slept, and coming to a resolution, she slipped from the room, closed the door noiselessly, and descended the stairs. The house was empty. The attraction which moved Arabella to go abroad had evidently drawn away the other inmates long before. It was a warm, cloudless, enticing day. She shut the front door and hastened round into Chief Street, and when near the theatre could hear the notes of the organ, a rehearsal for a coming concert being in progress. She entered under the archway of Aldgate College, where men were putting up awnings round the quadrangle for a ball in the hall that evening. People who had come up from the country for the day were picnicking on the grass, and Arabella walked along the gravel paths and under the aged limes. But finding this place rather dull, she returned to the streets, and watched the carriages drawing up for the concert, numerous dons and their wives, and undergraduates with gay female companions crowding up likewise. When the doors were closed and the concert began, she moved on. The powerful notes of that concert rolled forth through the swinging yellow blinds of the open windows, over the housetops, and into the still air of the lanes. They reached so far as to the room in which Jude lay, and it was about this time that his cough began again and awakened him. As soon as he could speak, he murmured, his eyes still closed, "A little water, please." Nothing but the deserted room received his appeal, and he coughed to exhaustion again, saying still more feebly, "Water, some water. Sue, Arabella." The room remained still as before. Presently he gasped again, "Throat, water. Sue, darling, drop of water, please. Oh, please." No water came, and the organ notes, faint as a bee's hum, rolled in as before. While he remained, his face changing, shouts and hurrahs came from somewhere in the direction of the river. "Ah, yes, the remembrance games," he murmured, "and I here, and Sue defiled." The hurrahs were repeated, drowning the faint organ notes. Jude's face changed more. He whispered slowly, his parched lips scarcely moving, "Let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, there is a man-child conceived." Hurrah! Let that day be darkness. Let not God regard it from above, neither let the light shine upon it. Lo, let that night be solitary, let no joyful voice come therein. Hurrah! Why died I not from the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? For now should I have lain still and been quiet, I should have slept, then had I been at rest. Hurrah! There the prisoners rest together. They hear not the voice of the oppressor. The small and the great are there, and the servant is free from his master. Wherefore is light given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter in soul? Meanwhile, Arabella, in her journey to discover what was going on, took a short cut down a narrow street and through an obscure nook into the quad of Cardinal. It was full of bustle and brilliant in the sunlight, with flowers and other preparations for a ball here also. A carpenter nodded to her, one who had formerly been a fellow workman of Jude's. A corridor was in course of erection from the entrance to the hall staircase, of gay red and buff bunting. Wagon-loads of boxes containing bright plants in full bloom were being placed about, and the great staircase was covered with red cloth. She nodded to one workman and another, and ascended to the hall on the strength of their acquaintance, where they were putting down a new floor and decorating for the dance. The cathedral bell close at hand was sounding for 5 o'clock service. "I should not mind having a spin there with a fellow's arm round my waist," she said to one of the men. "But Lord, I must be getting home again. There's a lot to do. No dancing for me." When she reached home, she was met at the door by Stagg and 1 or 2 other of Jude's fellow stoneworkers. "We're just going down to the river," said the former, "to see the boat bumping. But we've called round on our way to ask how your husband is." "He's sleeping nicely, thank you," said Arabella. "That's right. Well now, can't you give yourself half an hour's relaxation, Mrs. Fawley, and come along with us? 'Twould do you good." "I should like to go," she said. "I've never seen the boat racing, and I hear it is good fun. Come along." "How I wish I could." She looked longingly down the street. "Wait a minute, then. I'll just run up and see how he is. Father is with him, I believe, so I can most likely come." They waited, and she entered. Downstairs the inmates were absent, as before, having, in fact, gone in a body to the river where the procession of boats was to pass. When she reached the bedroom, she found that her father had not even now come. "Why couldn't he have been here?" she said impatiently. "He wants to see the boats himself, that's what it is." However, on looking round to the bed, she brightened, for she saw that Jude was apparently sleeping, though he was not in the usual half-elevated posture necessitated by his cough. He had slipped down and lay flat. A second glance caused her to start, and she went to the bed. His face was quite white, and gradually becoming rigid. She touched his fingers. They were cold, though his body was still warm. She listened at his chest. All was still within. The bumping of near 30 years had ceased. After her first appalled sense of what had happened, the faint notes of a military or other brass band from the river reached her ears, and in a provoked tone she exclaimed, "To think he should die just now! Why did he die just now?" Then, meditating another moment or two, she went to the door, softly closed it as before, and again descended the stairs. "Here she is," said one of the workmen. "We wondered if you were coming after all. Come along. We must be quick to get a good place. Well, how is he? Sleeping well still? Of course, we don't want to drag he away if—" "Oh, yes, sleeping quite sound. He won't wake yet," she said hurriedly. They went with the crowd down Cardinal Street, where they presently reached the bridge, and the gay barges burst upon their view. Thence they passed by a narrow slit down to the riverside path, now dusty, hot, and thronged. Almost as soon as they had arrived, the grand procession of boats began, the oars smacking with a loud kiss on the face of the stream as they were lowered from the perpendicular. "Oh, I say, how jolly! I'm glad I've come," said Arabella. "And it can't hurt my husband, my being away." On the opposite side of the river, on the crowded barges, were gorgeous nosegays of feminine beauty, fashionably arrayed in green, pink, blue, and white. The blue flag of the boat club denoted the centre of interest, beneath which a band in red uniform gave out the notes she had already heard in the death-chamber. Collegians of all sorts, in canoes with ladies, watching keenly for our boat, darted up and down. While she regarded the lively scene, somebody touched Arabella in the ribs, and looking round she saw Vilbert. "That philtre is operating, you know," he said with a leer. "Shame on 'ee to wreck a heart so." "I shan't talk of love today." "Why not? It is a general holiday." She did not reply. Vilbert's arm stole round her waist, which act could be performed unobserved in the crowd. An arch expression overspread Arabella's face at the feel of the arm, but she kept her eyes on the river as if she did not know of the embrace. The crowd surged, pushing Arabella and her friends sometimes nearly into the river, and she would have laughed heartily at the horseplay that succeeded, if the imprint on her mind's eye of a pale, statuesque countenance she had lately gazed upon had not sobered her a little. The fun on the water reached the acme of excitement. There were immersions, there were shouts. The race was lost and won. The pink and blue and yellow ladies retired from the barges, and the people who had watched began to move. "Well, it's been awfully good," cried Arabella, "but I think I must get back to my poor man. Father is there, so far as I know, but I'd better get back." "What's your hurry?" "Well, I must go. Dear, dear, this is awkward." At the narrow gangway where the people ascended from the riverside path to the bridge, the crowd was literally jammed into one hot mass, Arabella and Vilbert with the rest, and here they remained motionless, Arabella exclaiming, "Dear, dear," more and more impatiently, for it had just occurred to her mind that if Jude were discovered to have died alone, an inquest might be deemed necessary. "What a fidget you are, my love," said the physician, who, being pressed close against her by the throng, had no need of personal effort for contact. "Just as well have patience. There's no getting away yet." It was nearly 10 minutes before the wedged multitude moved sufficiently to let them pass through. As soon as she got up into the street, Arabella hastened on, forbidding the physician to accompany her further that day. She did not go straight to her house, but to the abode of a woman who performed the last necessary offices for the poorer dead, where she knocked. "My husband has just gone, poor soul," she said. "Can you come and lay him out?" Arabella waited a few minutes, and the two women went along, elbowing their way through the stream of fashionable people pouring out of Cardinal Meadow, and being nearly knocked down by the carriages. "I must call at the sexton's about the bell, too," said Arabella. "It is just round here, isn't it? I'll meet you at my door." By 10 o'clock that night, Jude was lying on the bedstead at his lodging, covered with a sheet, and straight as an arrow. Through the partly opened window the joyous throb of a waltz entered from the ballroom at Cardinal. 2 days later, when the sky was equally cloudless and the air equally still, two persons stood beside Jude's open coffin in the same little bedroom. On one side was Arabella, on the other the widow Edlin. They were both looking at Jude's face, the worn old eyelids of Mrs. Edlin being red. "How beautiful he is," said she. "Yes, he's a handsome corpse," said Arabella. The window was still open to ventilate the room, and it being about noontide, the clean air was motionless and quiet without. From a distance came voices, and an apparent noise of persons stamping. "What's that?" murmured the old woman. "Oh, that's the doctors in the theatre, conferring honorary degrees on the Duke of Hamptonshire, and a lot more illustrious gents of that sort. It's Remembrance Week, you know. The cheers come from the young men." "Aye, young and strong-lunged, not like our poor boy here." "What's that?" murmured the old woman. "Oh, that's the doctors in the theatre, conferring honorary degrees on the Duke of Hamptonshire, and a lot more illustrious gents of that sort. It's Remembrance Week, you know. The cheers come from the young men." "Aye, young and strong-lunged, not like our poor boy here." An occasional word, as from one making a speech, floated from the open windows of the theatre across to this quiet corner, at which there seemed to be a smile of some sort upon the marble features of Jude, while the old, superseded, Delphin editions of Virgil and Horace, and the dog-eared Greek Testament on the neighbouring shelf, and the few other volumes of the sort that he had not parted with, roughened with stone dust where he had been in the habit of catching them up for a few minutes between his labours, seemed to pale to a sickly cast at the sounds. The bells struck out joyously, and their reverberations travelled round the bedroom. Arabella's eyes removed from Jude to Mrs. Edlin. "Do you think she will come?" she asked. "I could not say. She swore not to see him again." "How is she looking?" "Tired and miserable, poor heart. Years and years older than when you saw her last. Quite a staid, worn woman now. 'Tis the man. She can't stomach un, even now." "If Jude had been alive to see her, he would hardly have cared for her any more, perhaps." "That's what we don't know. Didn't he ever ask you to send for us, since he came to see her in that strange way?" "No, quite the contrary. I offered to send, and he said I was not to let her know how ill he was." "Did he forgive her?" "Not as I know." "Well, poor little thing. 'Tis to be believed she's found forgiveness somewhere. She said she had found peace." "She may swear that on her knees to the Holy Cross upon her necklace till she's hoarse, but it won't be true," said Arabella. "She's never found peace since she left his arms, and never will again till she's as he is now." This concludes the reading of Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy. This book was read by Jill Masters.